Hey, my name's Maura and I'm gonna make a Slimer sculpture out of this nasty old Halloween pumpkin I had laying around. It used to have a light in it, but it's seen better days. So I'm drilling a couple holes to add some wire to make the arms. I think it's decent gauge wire. I think maybe 16 or so. I like drilling the two holes in the side so then I can put the wire, each end of the wire in and then twist it on the inside. And it really locks it into place. Then I'll come in and add a bunch of hot glue to the inside and the outside to add even more strength to make sure it's not going to come out. And I always add way more than I need, but I'd rather have too much on there than not enough. Now this part I had a lot of fun with, watching the foam just grow. It didn't grow as much as I thought it would, actually. Maybe it didn't help that these cans I had laying around the garage for at least a year. I don't know. Worked good enough. I did have to buy more. This took, how many was it? Like 4 cans, I think. If I had to do over again, I would have built up more of like a cardboard, like kind of substructure thing around the pumpkin. I liked that the pumpkin itself was hollow, so that gave me a structure to build around, but I could have added more cardboard to just have less foam to deal with. But this does work, so if you don't want to deal with the cardboard, this totally works, but you will need more foam. And it's not super expensive, but cardboard with all of our packages nowadays, cardboard's pretty much free. We all have that laying around. So let's kind of go for a general shape of Slimer. His nose is missing a bit, but it's getting there. I can kind of see it a little bit. With the piece of wire that I added at the top, I twisted it around on the inside, like the same thing I did with the arms, and then just added a bunch of hot glue to lock it into place. And I tried a bunch of different ways to carve the foam. A serrated edge to me worked best, so I started with a saw here. And I switched to just an old steak knife. We had one that was looking pretty sad in the kitchen, so now it's a garage steak knife. But like I had the little scraper, like a rasp kind of thing. It did okay, but it didn't do great. I really liked the saw and the steak knife for me. So I'm just trying to add more as needed, like carve away some with the saw and then add more foam to other spots. Just keep tweaking it until I'm happy. I still want to know why Slimer has a butt. He doesn't have any legs, but he has a butt. So I have to carve a butt crack, which was hysterical. There was no way I was not going to carve his butt. If he's in the original, I tried to make it. I didn't get the sculpture perfect, but for me, I got it perfect enough. And I didn't show that very well, but I noticed the foam at certain points, you could kind of smoosh it into place a little bit when it's skinned up a little bit, so it'll wait like, I don't know, five minutes or so, and it gets a skin, and you can kind of squish it to where you want, ish. I mean, still let it totally cure before you start carving away at it, or you're going to make a giant mess. And that foam, once it gets on your fingers, it is on there for days. I had some leftover EVA foam that I just wanted to get kind of a round shape for the arms. Like the forearm and the bicep just had two pieces. And I didn't measure these very well. I just cut them both to the same size on each arm just so they're symmetrical. But I knew I was going to add more foam on top, so I wasn't being too precise here. It's just eyeballing it. And the tubs of glue are just to help hold it in place while the hot glue sets up. Because I am not what you call patient. Another piece of EVA foam to form the bottom of the mouth. And just measuring and cutting it to fit. Shoving it in there, seeing what doesn't fit, cut off some more. And then just put a bunch of hot glue in there. That seemed to work pretty well. Now I'm creating it's kind of a triangle shape here. That's kind of the like the palm of the hands. I didn't do this to like perfect scale in the movie. I just kind of it was whatever the pumpkin was. So I kind of eyeballed what size the hands should be. But I have some thinner gauge wire. What was it? 18, I think. Just kind of like sewing that triangle bit onto the leftover wire that I had from the other part, and then use that thinner gauge wire to kind of sculpt some finger bones. So, and then just kept weaving the pieces back and forth into the palm. I'm not particularly great at sculpting hands, but I was pretty happy at how this one came out. The hands I've done before are always so tiny. It's a lot easier if it's bigger. But I just keep tweaking and tweaking until I was happy. Now I got some foam clay. I started with some cheaper stuff, the white stuff. I just ordered it off Amazon. Because I got a large bag, so I knew I wanted to cover the entire thing. And I knew I could put bigger chunks, like where his shoulders are. I put just kind of a big chunk of the foam clay because I didn't have the foam insulation there. And it worked out fine. So right now I'm just trying to cover everything. I'm not worried too much about detail. Just trying to form like the initial skin per se. And the teeth are made out of EVA foam cutoffs. I used the Dremel to sand them down to shape. And then with just some super glue, and I'm spraying some activator just to speed it up. And just sand and glue and sand and glue. And I did each tooth one by one, kind of trying to go by the picture. I realized later that I made them too small. The front teeth should have been, I think, almost double in size. But I liked them the way they were, so I just left them. Now I've got some more foam clay that I'm adding around the eyeballs to form the eyelids. Oh, the eyeballs are made from a ping pong ball that I cut in half and trimmed a bit and then hot glued on there. So, but the gray is just a different brand of foam clay. It's still kind of the same thing. I like this one better. It's the Fomo. I think that's what it's called. Fomo clay. I'll put a link. And this is for the tongue. So I'm just kind of basically doing a shape out of the aluminum foil and then covering it in another layer of the foam clay. And there's more foam clay on that piece at the bottom of the mouth, so you add a little water, it sticks really well. And a nice worm of foam clay, and that forms the upper gum. I put little balls in there because then I can kind of shove them between each tooth and add a bunch of water, and it all kind of mooshes together. It's a weird clay to sculpt with. It's more of you're trying to just moosh it into shape than trying to sculpt it. And I kept going back to other pieces like this on his brow ridge. You can see those lines. If I kept going back to him, it would hold the shape. But if I did the original like sculpt and then just left it, those shapes would kind of soften a bit. Like you can see in his upper arm there, it's much softer than it was before. It almost looks like a marshmallow, ironically, for the movie. But I'm putting here a bunch of just little balls of the foam clay on every knuckle, and then just using water to smooth it all out. And a bunch of little warts for him. Another little layer of fat. As fat as I made him, I didn't make him fat enough. But he's perfect enough for me. In the bottom, I left flat, so at some point, if I want to put him on a table, he'll sit nice and flat. But you could always round off the bottom if you wanted to. So I just kept adding detail wherever I thought it needed it. Tried not to get too carried away. Now it's just a coat of the filler primer. You can sand the foam clay pretty well, but I liked the texture that was there, so I just left it. Now I'm coating him in just a regular acrylic paint, nothing fancy. I like the Liquitex brand, personally, the basic one. You can get it at like Michael's or anything like that. Started him with dark green, because then it'll, when I brush on colors later, it just gives it a nice depth to it. And I'm just covering like everything. I'm not worried about being precise at all. So I always start with the dark colors and work myself to the light. That works out well for me. I've noticed a lot of other people go the other way. But, you know, it's paint. You don't like it, let it dry, paint over it. So figure out the best way that works for you. I loved putting the eyes in because it brought it all to life more. I kind of use dry brushing, sort of. It's kind of a wet dry brushing. Kind of put it on thick at the bottom of this teeth here, and then use a drier brush to kind of smoosh it up into the top. It gives kind of a sort of a gradient. Now this is my favorite part, when you turn like his brighter green. Because now it starts to, well, he's still a little scary green at the moment, but he starts to look more and more like himself now. This was kind of again like a heavy dry brush, because I wanted some of that dark green to show through. I didn't want it to be a solid color. I don't want it to look like a piece of plastic. And the lighter I go, I start to avoid any like dip in the sculpture. I only want to kind of highlight the pieces now. Ish. And I just keep going round and round and adding more and more wherever he needs it. When I get to the yellow highlights here, that's where he really, I thought, popped. Oh, I added an extra hook in the back because I didn't want to hang him just by his head. I wanted him to be kind of looking down on my porch. So here he is installed. Had to give him some snacks, of course. And I add a spotlight on him because he kind of disappeared at night. But I just love how he came out.